name is Joe Mann, and I'm here to talk to you today about frontline service robots and the integration that they require in the workflow. So let me ask you a question. How do you get to work? I assume most of you drive. Get up in the morning, make your coffee, go to the car, back out, drive down the street, get on the highway, merge, get off, drive to your parking spot, get out, walk into the building, right? What if you decided to fly a helicopter instead? How would that change your operation to get to work? Would you still make your coffee? Would you still listen to the radio? Would you fly down the same streets that you drive your car down? Would you park in the same parking spot at your work? Probably not, right? But I'm not here to talk to you today about helicopters. I'm here to talk to you today about robots. And like that example, in taking a piece of automation and putting it into your workflow or your operation today is not simply just substituting a task with automation and having that piece of automation do the same task in the same way that you had done manually before. You have to look at what you're in your operation holistically and say, how do we change? And you have to have the right mindset to be willing to change your operation to incorporate a frontline service robot. So what is a frontline service robot? There's a lot of service robots. If you look that up, search it, you'll see service robots. There's a large set of service robots. Frontline service robots are unique. And let me give you a few examples. Just downstairs in this convention center, there's a Microsoft store, and you'll see the Microsoft greeter robot standing there talking to people, welcoming them to the store and asking them if there's anything they can help them find. There's inventory robots that go up and down the aisles at grocery stores or retailers that scan the shelves and call back to the stocking clerk that says, hey, we're out of Cheez-Its and we're out of Doritos over here on aisle 4. There's a room service robot that'll actually deliver you a hamburger and a Coke at 2 o'clock in the morning at your hotel. There's professional cleaning robots, which is what I've spent the last 5 years of my life selling and implementing and deploying, where they do a professional cleaning job at schools, hospitals, office buildings, and the like. And there's security robots that actually patrol shopping centers, malls, secure locations to ensure that things are the way they should be. But they all have a unique thing in common, frontline service robots, compared to regular service robots. And that is they interact with the public, the general public, either directly or indirectly. When you compare them to regular service robots, they don't. A regular service robot might be an automated system in a manufacturing facility, or a medical robot that's doing some kind of medical operation. Obviously, there's a person there that they're doing that operation on, but it's a very static, fixed environment. If you look at other types of standard automation, that's the difference between the frontline service robot and a standard service robot. And right now, these frontline service robots have had some moderate success in the market, but not nearly the amount of success that market analysts 5 to 10 years ago predicted. We are still very much on the innovators and the early adopter stage. And the real reason is because there's been one challenge to deploying these that was very unanticipated, and that is getting the customer to change their operation and integrate it into their workflow. And it's much more difficult than you think. And why is that? Well, if we can figure that out, we can actually pull that innovation curve forward. So let's look at a few examples of automation that have actually been successful, been deployed. And these are not frontline service robots. If you look at RDA and RPA processes, healthcare, insurance, finance, those industries have taken the bull by the horns, as it were, and have integrated RDA and RPA into their data filing, archiving, ERP systems all across the world, driving efficiencies. If you look at some of the regular service robots, such as industrial, medical, manufacturing, agriculture, just to name a few, those are well on their way to being implemented, especially like in smart logistics warehouses. Think of Amazon, for example, right? So what's so different about frontline service robots and regular service robots? Again, because they interact directly with the public, it kind of provides here 4 unique challenges that we've found out and we've discovered. Number 1 is the environment. It's much more dynamic. You build a warehouse, a logistics warehouse, for the sole purpose of logistics. And then you can tailor your building around that and put the robots and the automation in place. You build your ERP system with an RDA or an RPA process for the sole purpose of managing those files and that data. And so you can build it the way you want. Frontline service robots operate in environments that have not been made for them to operate in. We didn't build this building for the sole purpose so that a cleaning robot can go down the hallway and clean it. No, we made it so that people can shop here and buy goods at the stores. We don't build a government agency building for the sole purpose of a security robot driving down, or a retail grocery store for the sole purpose of a retail stocking robot to go down. That's a secondary function that's necessary to support the business that goes on in those buildings. And so it's much more dynamic. You have a lot of changing things. Think about a retail store. The end caps that change. You walk in, there's a pile of Coke one week for the big game. The next week you come and there's pumpkins everywhere because it's Halloween. So the layout and the environment is always changing, and that poses challenges to robots that have to navigate. You look at the sectors that frontline service robots are typically in: janitorial, security, retail, hospitality. These are much more unregulated, and what I mean by unregulated is there's not regulated processes. If you look at manufacturing, you've got ISO. If you look at healthcare, banking, finance, they're all regulated in some way. For standard processes, banks need to do things in similar ways that other banks do. Insurance companies have to process claims and show what they do in certain ways. There's regulations, there's auditors, et cetera. I've worked in the janitorial world now for 17 years. There's no one way to clean a building. There's some best practices maybe, but there's absolutely no process that says this is the way to clean a building. That's kind of the secret sauce of every janitorial company. There's no one right way to patrol a building for security. There's no right way for how many mustards you need to have on the shelf or how many marketing displays you have to have at a grocery store. That's up to the retailer. That's up to the company that provides those services for the customer. Because of that, monitoring is very difficult. When you don't have regulations and you don't have set processes, it's very difficult to monitor the work that's done in those sectors. So you don't have a really good way to prove the productivity rates that this really expensive CapEx robot is providing. And data gathering is not easy. And finally, the operator, the folks that are actually using these, that have been tasked to put these in place to save the company money after they've made an investment of $40,000, $50,000, or $100,000 to buy these robots. It's typically a different type of employee. It's not a skilled engineer tech at an industrial factory. It's typically a janitor or a security guard who may feel threatened or intimidated by this type of technology that very well could take their job and replace them. So if we drill down for a second into a more concrete example for the professional cleaning, I kind of said some of this already, but in retail grocery, we have issues with the cleaning machine going up and down the aisles because of the marketing displays that are always changing. In the sectors, like I said, what's the best workflow? What's the best way to clean a building? What is clean? I bet if you ask me and you ask my wife what is clean, we might have a different answer, right? How do we prove the results? Again, in these types of industries that frontline service robots operate in, the only way that you really prove a result is by the number of complaints you get from the customer, right? If you're out, seriously, we have a complaint, restrooms account for 80% of complaints when it comes to janitorial service. So, if no complaints, everything must be great, right? We don't need to go check, honestly, that's how it works. Nothing got stolen, nothing got broken into, security must be working great. We don't need to go check, right? And finally, like I said, the operators, they feel threatened or intimidated. Yep. So what we realized over the last 4 or 5 years that I've been selling and deploying these robots around the world is that we need to have something called service robot integration. You really need to, like I said, back to the helicopter analogy, talk to your customers and say, okay, let us come and consult with you. Let us help you understand your workflow. Let us help put this in, and you must be willing to change how you operate today to best integrate this service and gain the efficiencies. So when it comes to the environment, you have to have a balance between technology cost and customer expectations. Most customers want the robot to operate in every square inch of their facility because they want to get the most out of their investment, of course. But it's just simply not possible. If the robot runs down the hallway here, whether it's a cleaning robot, security robot in a retail store, like a retail shopping center, it's going to go down the hall, probably after hours, the shops are closed. All of a sudden, it's going to run straight across Banana Republic, and it's going to stop dead in its tracks, and it won't move. And you get a phone call that says, the robot doesn't work, come fix it. Well, what's the matter with it? I don't know, it stopped, doesn't work. Well, guess what? Banana Republic employees, when they left, they forgot to turn off their electric scanners for theft deterrent scanners. Well, guess what? The theft deterrent scanners put out 42 kilohertz microfrequency, which is exactly the same frequency that the sonars on that robot used. It saw that, it saw those wavelengths and said, hey, I can't go there, there's something in my way. Right? So it's a more dynamic environment. You have to make sure that your scope of work and your KPIs are very clear. So what are you trying to accomplish? And we work with the customers to do that. From a monitoring standpoint, we make sure on our robots, we have telemetry, so that goes to the cloud data. It knows who logged in, when they logged in, how long it ran, which maps it ran, were they completed successfully, or were there any blockages? And it sends real-time reports post-run, and it sends alerts and notifications if the robot's blocked. Hey, I'm stuck. I don't know why. I can't get through my map. Please come help me. And it sends a text. So what we did was package those solutions into 3 very easy bullet points for our customers. We said, look, dear customer, someone calls and says, I want a robot. Great, let's talk about 3 things. Number 1, you gotta have the right ROI, obviously, okay? So what kind of investment or what kind of return are you looking for? 18-month return, 24-month return, and what is value to you? Is it just saving money, or is it about having technology and being an innovator? Because there are customers who want that. There are customers who say, I will spend $50,000 and all I want this robot to do is drive around the lobby for 20 minutes all day long because I want my customers to come in and see I have a robot and that's worth money to me. Very few, but some. So there's gotta be the right ROI. So you see countries like Australia, who has a very high labor rate, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Northeast, West Coast, in the Chicago kind of up in that area, where you've got higher labor rates, much faster return on investment. And that's where you see a lot of the frontline service automation really kicking in. Not so much from Texas to Florida. It's a lot of labor pool and very low wages. Sorry, got ahead of myself there. You gotta have the right site. So explain to the customer about the frequencies of the theft deterrent devices and say, if you cannot manage and control your vendors who can't turn these off, it will not work. And by the way, if you want to put it in a grocery store, we really need to stay away from the deli and the bakery and all that stuff with the little trolleys and the carts, and how often do you change your marketing displays at the end of the aisle? Finally though, most importantly, it's the mindset. You need to make sure that everybody in your organization, from the CFO to the head of purchasing to the head of operations, is all on board, and that's all the way down. And I'll take a play out of Peter Drucker's playbook and say management by objective. You really need to make sure that objective is aligned, then rolled out and communicated, monitored, and then either corrected or rewarded for being done right. You won't guess how many times we receive a phone call that says, yeah, the robot hasn't been used in like 30 days. Well, why not? Well, I don't know, it just doesn't work. And then we show up, and the operator was scared that it was gonna take their job, so they, poked out one of the sensors and stuck it in the closet in the basement and said, well, I don't know what happened to it. It happens, more often than you think. So, service robotic integration, SRI. I truly believe that this is the next occupation field. And we kind of took that to heart at Intellibot over the last 5 years. When we hired individuals to sell machines, I didn't hire salespeople. I hired service robot integrators who were consultants, who were subject matter experts, who were trainers, and who were project managers. I didn't hire just engineering technicians. I hired engineers who were tech savvy, who understood it, and could program and fix things and all that kind of stuff, who had an engineering background, but they had to be all of those things too. Subject matter experts, trainers, communicators. Because when they're out deploying the robot and programming it and mapping it, they're all working alongside the operations, right? And they've got to be able to communicate those things to the operations. And I believe what you'll see in the next 5 to 10 years is not only will OEMs provide this service, because they have to, otherwise they won't sell machines. We had to, or we wouldn't sell machines. But at some point, the OEMs are going to say, look, I'm really not in the business of service robot integration. I just want to make robots and sell them, right? Ford doesn't have drivers that, test trainers that teach you how to drive. They just want to sell cars. If you want to learn how to drive, you go find a driving instructor, right? So I believe large end users will also take up this mantle. I know some already are. I know the largest building service contractor in the United States right now has an open position for a vice president of innovation and robot technology, because they need to understand this exact thing. They need to understand how can we internally integrate robots into our operation. We can't depend on the manufacturers to do it. And finally, I think you'll see a lot of third-party groups pop up, right? Third parties who support the OEMs and the end users, because maybe they're too small or they can't make that investment, the OEMs and the end users. And then you'll have a third party that's a robot service integrator. Those groups, those types of third-party organizations do exist today, but they're very focused on service robots, the other types of service robots. There are very few, I think I know of only 3 in North America, 1 in Canada and 2 in the United States, that actually exist for frontline service robot integration. So, like I said, 2020, the 2020s, this will be the decade of frontline service robots and service robotic integration. It will start with the early adopters and the innovators from the end user side who take this and see this, and once they start pulling away from their competition because of the efficiencies that they've put into their business, that bell curve will move forward because the rest of the market must catch up. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure speaking to you today.